Have you ever walked into your own home and felt like a stranger? Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you missed every single red flag? I'm about to tell you a story that'll make you question everything you think you know about love, revenge, and justice. My name is Jack Whitmore. I'm 32 years old, and 3 years ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I had a beautiful wife, a cozy house, and a golden retriever named Charlie who greeted me at the door every single day. I worked long hours at an architecture firm, but I came home to warmth and laughter. Until the day I didn't. I came home to find her suitcases by the door, the couch missing, and Charlie's leash hook empty. The silence hit me like a physical blow. No goodbye, no explanation, no closure. Just a text message that changed everything. We're done. You know why. But here's the thing, I didn't know. I had no clue what I'd done wrong. As I stood there staring at that empty leash hook, something inside me hardened. I made myself a promise that day. I'd never be caught off guard again. 2 weeks later, the universe decided to kick me while I was down. The architecture firm where I'd worked for 6 years suddenly folded. Budget cuts, they said. Market downturn. The usual corporate nonsense. But they offered a decent severance package, 6 months of salary to help me get back on my feet. I thought maybe this was a blessing in disguise. Time to heal, time to figure out my next move. That's when the lawyer showed up at my door. She wanted half. Half of everything, including my severance pay. And legally, she had every right to it. I pulled out the prenup she'd convinced me to sign 3 years earlier. I remembered that night clearly. She'd brought wine, kissed my neck, and whispered about protecting each other's futures. As I reread those documents with fresh eyes, the truth hit me like a sledgehammer. Every clause, every provision, every seemingly innocent detail, it all favored her. She hadn't been protecting our future. She'd been planning her exit strategy from day one. That's when my quiet anger began to simmer, building into something much more dangerous. Life has a cruel sense of timing. 2 weeks after the divorce papers were finalized, I was walking past the boutique yoga studio downtown. The one I used to pay membership fees for. Through the large glass windows, I saw them. Her. And him. They were laughing together, sharing some private joke, completely absorbed in each other's company. She wore that radiant smile I used to think was reserved for me. Her hand rested on his chest as they talked, the same gesture she used to make with me when she was being flirty. She wasn't mourning our marriage. She wasn't devastated by our separation. She'd moved on. No, she'd upgraded. The rational part of my brain told me to walk away, to let sleeping dogs lie. But something deeper, something primal, told me to stay and watch. I ducked into the coffee shop across the street and observed them for an hour. They looked comfortable together. Too comfortable. Like they'd been doing this for a while. I wasn't going to rage or make a scene. Instead, I decided to do something much more strategic. I was going to learn everything I could about this new chapter of her life. 3 months passed in a blur of job hunting and therapy sessions. I was slowly rebuilding my life when fate intervened again. I met up with Tyler, a mutual friend from college, for drinks at our old hangout spot. We were catching up, talking about work and life, when he casually dropped a bombshell. Oh, by the way, Amanda's getting married again. To that yoga instructor guy. Pretty fast, right? It's only been 6 months since you two split. The words hit me like a brick wall, but I didn't let it show. I nodded calmly, took a sip of my beer, and asked casual follow-up questions. When was the wedding? Where? How did Tyler know? Inside, my mind was racing. 6 months from separation to engagement meant they'd been together long before our marriage ended. Everything I'd suspected was true. I'd been played from the beginning. But instead of anger, I felt something else, clarity. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't heartbroken. I was calculating, planning, thinking 3 moves ahead. I smiled politely, paid for Tyler's drink, and started formulating a plan that would take months to execute. I spent the next week researching him online, His name was Brandon Cross, 20 years old, yoga instructor turned entrepreneur. He had that perfectly sculpted Instagram presence, shirtless beach photos, motivational quotes, and pictures of expensive cars that probably weren't his. But the deeper I dug, the more interesting things became. Brandon had a family, including a younger sister named Elena who ran a small interior design firm called Refined Spaces. According to her website, she specialized in residential and commercial projects throughout the city. And according to her LinkedIn profile, she was hiring. I had enough architectural background from my previous job to make myself useful. I understood space planning, had an eye for design, and knew how to work with clients. More importantly, I needed a way to get close to this family, to understand who Amanda was really marrying. This wasn't about revenge yet. This was about reconnaissance. I updated my resume, highlighting every design-related project I'd ever worked on, and sent Elena Cross a carefully crafted email expressing interest in her open position. I positioned myself as someone looking for a fresh start, eager to learn and contribute to a growing business. 3 days later, she called me for an interview. Elena Cross was nothing like her brother. Where Brandon was all flash and surface charm, Elena was thoughtful, professional, and genuinely passionate about her work. She interviewed me at her small but impressive office downtown, surrounded by fabric samples, floor plans, and photographs of completed projects. I played the humble guy perfectly, someone who'd recently gone through a difficult divorce and was looking to rebuild his career in a field he'd always been passionate about. I emphasized my attention to detail, my willingness to start at the bottom, and my appreciation for good design. She liked my portfolio. She liked my attitude. Most importantly, she liked my story. I believe in second chances, she said, shaking my hand. When can you start? I didn't need this job financially. My severance package was still covering my expenses. But I needed something much more valuable: proximity to Brandon's world. Elena gave me a keycard to the office, access to client files, and most importantly, a front-row seat to her family's dynamics. Within a week, I was attending family dinners, hearing inside jokes, and learning all about Brandon's business ventures and relationship with Amanda. While executing my long-term plan, I focused on rebuilding myself. I found a new job at a different architecture firm, better pay, more creative projects, and colleagues who didn't know about my personal drama. I started going to the gym regularly, building physical strength that matched my growing mental resilience. I also started therapy with Dr. Patricia Williams, a no-nonsense counselor who helped me process my anger in healthy ways. She taught me that revenge fantasies were normal, but acting on them was dangerous. I nodded and agreed, never mentioning that my plans weren't about revenge, they were about justice. The most healing thing I did was adopt a rescue dog from the local shelter. He was a golden retriever mix who looked remarkably similar to Charlie. I named him Chance, both as a nod to new beginnings and because he deserved a second chance at happiness, just like me. Having Chance around reminded me that I wasn't broken. I was becoming someone stronger, smarter, and more strategic than I'd ever been before. Amanda and Brandon had no idea what was coming, and that anonymity was my greatest weapon. The breakthrough came during a late Friday evening at Elena's office. We'd been working on a major commercial project, and she'd ordered Chinese takeout while we finished the final presentation. After a few glasses of wine, Elena started opening up about her family. Brandon's always been the golden child, she said, scrolling through fabric samples. But honestly, his business track record is pretty spotty. His last startup wasn't actually sold like he tells everyone. It collapsed because of mismanagement issues. My ears perked up, but I kept my expression neutral. That's tough. Startups are risky. The thing is, he blamed the investors when it failed. Said they pulled funding unfairly. Elena paused, looking conflicted. But I saw some emails on his old computer, the one he asked me to dispose of. The investors were asking legitimate questions about missing funds and inflated user numbers. Brandon was covering up some serious problems. She showed me her laptop, where she'd saved screenshots of those emails before deleting the computer's hard drive. The evidence was damning: fabricated financial reports, lies to investors, and a pattern of deception that went back years. Brandon wasn't just a failed entrepreneur. He was a fraud. 2 weeks later, Elena practically bounced into the office with excitement. She'd just gotten off the phone with her mother, who was planning what she called the social event of the season. "They're finally making it official!" Elena beamed, showing me a beautiful engagement party invitation on her phone. "Brandon and Amanda are having their engagement party next month. Mom's been planning it for weeks." She's so excited to welcome Amanda into the family officially. Elena was genuinely happy for her brother, completely unaware of my connection to the bride-to-be. She invited me to attend as her plus one, explaining that it would be a great networking opportunity and a chance to meet potential clients. "They're really perfect together," she gushed. "Amanda's so elegant and sophisticated. She's exactly what Brandon needs to settle down and focus on building something lasting." I RSVP'd yes immediately and bought a navy suit for the occasion. But I wasn't planning to attend as Elena's cheerful colleague. I was going as an investigator, ready to gather intelligence and assess the situation firsthand. The engagement party would be my first face-to-face encounter with Amanda since she'd walked out of my life. I was curious to see how she'd react to my unexpected presence. The engagement party was held at an upscale rooftop venue downtown, complete with string lights, champagne fountains, and a stunning view of the city skyline. Elena looked radiant in a midnight blue dress, excited to introduce me to her family and friends. That's when I saw her. Amanda stood near the bar, wearing a flowing white dress that made her look like she belonged in a magazine. She was laughing at something Brandon was saying, her hand resting possessively on his arm. She looked happy, confident, completely at peace with her choices. Then she noticed me. The color drained from her face. Her perfect smile faltered for just a moment, a crack in the facade that only I would notice. She excused herself from her conversation and walked over, her composure returning with each step. "Jack," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "Wow. Small world." I leaned in close enough that only she could hear me. "Not that small, Amanda." Her eyes darted around the room, looking for escape routes or explanations. She didn't know why I was there, didn't understand my connection to Elena or what I might be planning. And that uncertainty terrified her more than any threat I could have made. The engagement party revealed everything I needed to know about Brandon Cross. As the evening progressed and the champagne flowed freely, he became increasingly loud and boastful. He gathered a crowd of men near the bar and started bragging about his various business ventures. "Crypto's where the real money is," he slurred, gesturing wildly with his drink. "I've got investments that aren't even on the books yet. Getting out before the market corrects, you know? Smart money always exits before the crash." Elena rolled her eyes from across the room, clearly embarrassed by her brother's behavior. But I was taking mental notes of every word, every detail, every admission. He talked about off-the-books transactions, hinted at tax avoidance strategies, and bragged about having insider information that helped him time his investments perfectly. The more he drank, the more he revealed about financial arrangements that sounded questionably legal. By the end of the night, I had a clear picture of who Brandon Cross really was, a small-time con artist who'd gotten lucky a few times and now thought he was untouchable. People like him always made the same mistake. They assumed their charm would protect them from consequences. They were wrong. Monday morning, I arrived at Elena's office with coffee and fresh perspective. She looked exhausted, still recovering from the weekend's festivities and her brother's embarrassing display. "Brandon was a bit much on Saturday night," I said casually, arranging design samples on her desk. Elena sighed deeply. "He always gets like that at family events. The drinking, the bragging, the need to be the center of attention. It's embarrassing." I waited a moment before asking, "Ever wonder why he changes jobs so frequently?" I've noticed he mentions a lot of different ventures. She frowned, looking up from her computer. He says it's just the nature of startups. High risk, high reward, that kind of thing. Startups, or bad exits. I suggested gently. The seed was planted. I didn't need to push harder or provide evidence yet. Elena was intelligent and observant. She would start connecting the dots on her own. My job was simply to water that seed of doubt and let it grow naturally. Over the following weeks, I noticed her paying closer attention to Brandon's stories, asking more pointed questions about his business dealings, and looking skeptical when he made grand claims about his success. A week after the engagement party, I received an unexpected gift from Tyler. He'd taken a part-time security job at the venue to make extra money, and he noticed something interesting on the surveillance footage from that night. "Dude, you're not going to believe this," he said, sending me a video file via encrypted message. I was reviewing the cameras for a different incident, and I caught something weird. The video showed a hallway outside the venue's private restrooms. Amanda and Brandon were having what appeared to be a heated argument, completely unaware they were being recorded. Their body language was aggressive, hostile, nothing like the perfect couple they portrayed all evening. At one point, Brandon grabbed Amanda's wrist forcefully, pulling her closer as he spoke intensely into her ear. She tried to pull away, but he tightened his grip. Her face showed genuine fear, not the confident smile she'd worn all night. When they returned to the party minutes later, both were smiling again, playing their roles perfectly. But the cameras had captured their reality. This wasn't a fairy tale romance. It was a relationship built on control, manipulation, and fear. I saved the video file to multiple secure locations. It wasn't evidence of anything criminal, but it was proof that their perfect relationship was a carefully constructed lie. During a late evening at Elena's office, I discovered something that changed everything. Elena had stepped out to meet a client, leaving me alone with the computers and filing systems. Brandon had been using Elena's office as his unofficial workspace, leaving behind folders and documents from his various business ventures. In a folder marked New Venture Confidential, I found a draft pitch deck for his latest startup idea. The financial projections were completely fabricated. Revenue numbers that had no basis in reality, user growth charts that showed impossible exponential curves, and market analysis that contradicted publicly available data. But the most damning evidence was in the footnotes. Brandon had listed himself as the successful founder and CEO of his previous company, claiming he'd sold it for a 7-figure exit. The reality, as Elena had told me, was that the company had collapsed due to his mismanagement and potential fraud. I photographed every page using my phone, making sure to capture the metadata and timestamps. This wasn't just about exposing Brandon to Amanda anymore. This was about protecting future investors and business partners from his fraudulent schemes. The evidence was building, piece by piece, creating an undeniable pattern of deception and criminal behavior. 3 days later, my phone rang at 11 p.m. Amanda's name appeared on the screen, a number I'd kept but never expected to see again. I let it ring twice before answering, keeping my voice calm and neutral. "Hello, Amanda. Why are you working for Elena?" she demanded, skipping any pretense of pleasantries. I needed a job. She needed help. It's called employment. There was a long pause before she continued, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Are you trying to ruin my life, Jack? Is this some kind of sick revenge fantasy?" I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "Why would I want to ruin something so perfect? You seem incredibly happy with your choices. I know what you're doing," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I'm working, Amanda. I'm building a new life. I'm moving forward. Maybe you should try it sometime." After I hung up, I realized she was scared. She knew I was close to her new family, but she didn't know why or what I might have discovered. That uncertainty was eating at her, making her paranoid and reactive. Good. Let her wonder. The next week, Elena came into the office looking troubled and distracted. She'd spent the weekend at a family barbecue, and something had clearly bothered her about the experience. "I confronted Brandon about some inconsistencies in his business stories," she said, sitting heavily in her desk chair. "He got really defensive and angry. Started accusing me of not supporting him, of being jealous of his success." She pulled up her laptop and showed me a series of text messages from Brandon, each more aggressive than the last. He was trying to gaslight her, making her question her own perceptions and memories of events. "But here's the thing," Elena continued. "I kept notes and emails from when his last company failed. I remember the late-night phone calls, the stress, the way he blamed everyone except himself. His current version of events doesn't match what actually happened." I didn't respond immediately, letting her process her thoughts and reach her own conclusions. "What else aren't you telling me, Jack?" she asked suddenly, looking directly at me. I met her gaze steadily but didn't answer. Instead, I opened her laptop and pulled up a secure folder I'd been preparing. "Maybe it's time you did some digging of your own." Elena's investigation revealed something I hadn't expected. Brandon had pressured Amanda into signing a non-disclosure agreement about his business dealings, a document buried in legal terminology that most people wouldn't understand without a lawyer's help. The NDA wasn't just about protecting trade secrets. It included a liability clause that made Amanda financially responsible if any of Brandon's business ventures failed due to external interference or negative publicity. Essentially, if anyone exposed Brandon's fraudulent activities, Amanda would be left holding the financial responsibility. Elena stared at the document in disbelief. He made her sign this before they got engaged. She has no idea what she's legally committed to. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt genuine sympathy for Amanda. Yes, she'd betrayed me and destroyed our marriage. But she was walking into a trap that would ruin her financially and potentially land her in legal trouble for crimes she didn't commit. Elena wasn't just angry anymore, she was heartbroken. Her brother had manipulated everyone around him, including his own family and the woman he claimed to love. "I can't protect him anymore," she said quietly. "This isn't just bad business. This is fraud, and he's dragging innocent people down with him." That's when I knew Elena would help me expose the truth. Despite mounting evidence of Brandon's fraudulent behavior, the wedding preparations continued full steam ahead. Amanda's social media showed a carefully curated timeline of dress fittings, venue visits, and romantic dinner dates. She was projecting the image of perfect happiness to the world. "Image is everything to Amanda," Elena observed, scrolling through the engagement photos. "She's invested so much in presenting this fairy tale romance that she can't back down now, even if she's starting to have doubts." The wedding was scheduled for late summer at an exclusive country club, with over 200 guests and a budget that seemed far beyond what either Brandon or Amanda could actually afford. The pressure to maintain appearances was driving both of them to make increasingly desperate decisions. But image doesn't protect you from truth. And I had been systematically collecting every piece of evidence needed to expose Brandon's criminal activities and Amanda's willful ignorance of his behavior. The wedding day was going to be their moment of triumph, their public declaration of love and success. Instead, it was going to be the day their carefully constructed lies finally collapsed under the weight of reality. I had every piece I needed. Now it was just a matter of timing and execution. Elena's access to Brandon's digital life proved invaluable. As his sister and business collaborator, she had passwords to his cloud storage, email accounts, and file-sharing systems. Over several weeks, we systematically documented his fraudulent activities. The evidence was overwhelming: falsified financial reports to investors, fabricated customer testimonials, manipulated accounting records, and email chains that showed deliberate intent to deceive business partners. Brandon hadn't just made bad business decisions, he'd committed multiple felonies. I organized everything like a legal case file, with timestamps, cross-references, and clear documentation of each fraudulent act. Elena helped by providing context about family conversations and business meetings where Brandon had lied about his activities. We created multiple backup copies of all evidence, storing them in secure cloud accounts and physical drives. This wasn't just about destroying Brandon and Amanda's wedding day. It was about preventing them from committing future crimes and protecting other potential victims. Hey, I need to pause here for a moment. If you're finding this story as intense as I am telling it, drop a comment below and let me know what you think Amanda deserves. And while you're at it, hit that like button if you're Team Jack so far. Trust me, this story is just getting started. The wedding day arrived with perfect summer weather. Clear skies, gentle breeze, and golden sunlight that made the country club grounds look like something from a magazine. Guests arrived in expensive cars, wearing designer outfits, ready to celebrate what everyone believed was a beautiful love story. I took a seat near the back of the ceremony area, uninvited but unnoticed among the crowd of Amanda's work colleagues and distant relatives. Elena had provided me with enough details about the guest list and seating arrangements to blend in seamlessly. As the processional music began and wedding party members walked down the aisle, I felt surprisingly calm. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about justice, truth, and protecting future victims from Brandon's criminal behavior. Amanda looked stunning in her flowing white dress, carrying a bouquet of white roses and baby's breath. She walked down the aisle with confidence, smiling at friends and family members who had gathered to celebrate her special day. The officiant began the ceremony with traditional words about love, commitment, and building a life together based on trust and honesty. The irony wasn't lost on me. Just before the vows were scheduled to begin, I handed a sealed envelope to the wedding coordinator, along with a $50 tip. Please deliver this to the bride immediately. It's urgent family information she needs to see. Amanda opened the envelope with curious fingers, probably expecting a last-minute card from a relative or friend. Instead, she found printed screenshots of Brandon's fraudulent business documents, copies of his lying emails to investors, and time-stamped evidence of his criminal activities. At the bottom of the stack was a handwritten note. You deserve to know who you're really marrying. This isn't about us. It's about protecting you from making the biggest mistake of your life. The color drained from Amanda's face as she flipped through the pages. Her hands started trembling, causing the papers to rustle loudly in the sudden silence. The wedding music stopped abruptly as the musician noticed something was wrong. She dropped her bouquet, the white roses scattering across the grass as she looked up at Brandon with a mixture of horror and betrayal in her eyes. Is this true? She asked, her voice carrying clearly in the hushed ceremony space. Did you lie about everything? Brandon's face went pale as he recognized some of the documents. He started stammering excuses, trying to explain away the evidence as misunderstandings or taken out of context. But Elena stood up from her seat in the family section. It's all true, Amanda. I've seen everything. He's been lying to all of us. The wedding guests sat in stunned silence as Amanda confronted Brandon with the evidence. Some people started whispering among themselves, trying to understand what was happening. Others pulled out their phones to record the dramatic scene unfolding before them. Brandon's parents rushed forward, trying to salvage the situation and convince everyone that this was just a misunderstanding. But Elena had prepared for this moment. She calmly approached the microphone and addressed the gathered crowd. I'm Brandon's sister, and I need everyone to know that these documents are real. My brother has been committing fraud, lying to investors, and manipulating everyone who trusts him. I can't stand by and watch him destroy more lives. The father of the bride demanded to see the evidence for himself. As he read through the financial documents and email chains, his face grew increasingly angry. He'd invested money in Brandon's previous venture and lost everything when it collapsed. Brandon tried to deflect blame, claiming the documents were fabricated or taken out of context. But too many people had been hurt by his lies, and they weren't willing to stay silent anymore. Security guards appeared. Whether called by the venue or angry family members, I couldn't tell. Brandon was escorted off the property by his own father, who was shouting about lawyers and criminal charges. The fairy tale wedding had become a public humiliation and criminal exposure. 2 days later, the local business journal published a front-page story. Tech entrepreneur's wedding disrupted by fraud allegations. The article detailed Brandon's pattern of deceptive business practices, including quotes from multiple investors who had been victimized by his schemes. Elena's interior design firm was praised for cooperating with investigators and providing crucial evidence. The story positioned her as a whistleblower who had courageously exposed her own brother's criminal activities to protect future victims. Within a week, Brandon lost every current investor and was banned from several business networking organizations. The state attorney general's office opened a formal investigation into his fraudulent activities, with potential charges including securities fraud, wire fraud, and tax evasion. Amanda, meanwhile, completely disappeared from social media and public life. Her work colleagues reported that she'd taken an indefinite leave of absence and left town without providing a forwarding address. The perfect life she tried to build by abandoning our marriage had crumbled spectacularly, leaving her with nothing but legal bills and public embarrassment. I felt vindicated, but not victorious. Justice had been served, but it hadn't brought me the satisfaction I'd expected. 3 weeks after the wedding disaster, I received a single text message from Amanda. "You think you won?" I stared at the message for several minutes before responding. "I didn't win anything, Amanda. I healed. You destroyed yourself. I just stepped out of the way." I added, "Brandon was a criminal who would have ruined your life eventually. I saved you from years of legal troubles and financial destruction. You should be thanking me." She never replied. After sending that message, I blocked her number permanently. There was nothing left to say, no closure to seek, no reconciliation to pursue. Our chapter was finally, definitively closed. The anger that had driven me for months was gone, replaced by a sense of peace I hadn't felt since before our marriage fell apart. I'd learned to trust my instincts, stand up for myself, and protect others from predatory behavior. But most importantly, I'd learned that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building a life so fulfilling that your enemies become irrelevant. Elena and I continued working together, eventually expanding her design firm into a successful regional business. We remained close friends, bonded by our shared experience of exposing Brandon's crimes and protecting future victims. 1 year later, I stood at the altar of a small church across town, wearing a simple gray suit and looking out at 50 of my closest friends and family members. The wedding was everything Amanda's hadn't been: intimate, genuine, and built on a foundation of trust and honesty. My bride was Dr. Patricia Williams, the therapist who had helped me heal from the trauma of betrayal and taught me how to love again. Our relationship had developed slowly, carefully, built on mutual respect and shared values rather than passion and promises. Chance lay at my feet during the ceremony, wearing a small bow tie and wagging his tail gently. He'd been the ring bearer, carrying our simple gold bands down the aisle with dignity and enthusiasm. As Patricia and I exchanged vows, I realized that Amanda had actually done me a favor. Her betrayal had forced me to become stronger, smarter, and more discerning. I'd learned to recognize red flags, trust my instincts, and build relationships based on reality rather than fantasy. The best revenge hadn't been destroying Amanda's wedding or exposing Brandon's crimes. The best revenge was building a life so fulfilling, so genuine, and so peaceful that they could never touch it. Before I wrap this up, I want to hear from you. What's the most satisfying part of this story for you? And if you enjoyed this wild ride of justice and karma, smash that subscribe button because I've got plenty more jaw-dropping stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. As we walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, I felt completely at peace. I'd gotten my last laugh, but more importantly, I'd gotten my life back.